From corporate lawsuits that forced expensive digital alterations to Arnold Schwarzenegger mediating between feuding filmmakers who refused to speak to each other, the making of this 1996 action thriller was far more chaotic than any scene in the movie. With bizarre casting suggestions, manufacturing disasters, and a script that went through 56 different versions, the behind-the-scenes drama rivaled the on-screen explosions. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Eraser. Fact 1. Arnold mediated a silent war. Making Eraser turned into one of Hollywood's most awkward productions when producer Arnold Schwarzenegger and director Chuck Russell developed such an intense dislike for each other that they completely stopped speaking during filming. The two men, who were supposed to work together to bring this $100 million action movie to life, refused to communicate directly and would only relay messages through Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. This bizarre situation meant that the star of the movie had to take on an unexpected role as a diplomatic go-between, essentially running a shuttle diplomacy service on his own film set. Schwarzenegger would meet separately with Schwarzenegger and Russell, listening to their concerns and complaints about each other, then carry those messages back and forth to keep the production moving forward. The actor found himself organizing shooting schedules, discussing scene changes, and handling logistics that would normally require direct communication between the producer and director. What makes this situation even more remarkable is that both men were seasoned Hollywood professionals who had worked on major films before. Schwarzenegger had produced successful movies like Platoon and The Fugitive, while Russell had directed hits like The Mask and A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Yet their personality clash was so severe that they couldn't maintain basic professional communication. Despite this behind-the-scenes drama, the film somehow managed to stay on schedule and within budget. Schwarzenegger later described working with both men as pleasant on an individual basis, but the fact that Eraser became a commercial success earning over $240 million worldwide is remarkable considering the producer and director were essentially not speaking to each other for months during production. Fact 2. 56 script versions in 1 year. The screenplay for Eraser went through an absolutely staggering 56 different drafts in just 1 year, creating one of the most rewritten scripts in Hollywood history. This wasn't just a case of minor tweaks and polished passes, but major overhauls involving 13 different writers who all took their turn trying to fix what came before them. The original script was written by Tony Pourrier, who had a background in advertising and directing hip-hop music videos rather than traditional screenwriting. From there, the script passed through the hands of writers including Wallen Green, who had written The Wild Bunch, Michael Chernukin from Law & Order, Frank Darabont, William Wisher Jr. from Terminator 2, Graham Yost, and even John Milius, who did rewrites as a personal favor to Schwarzenegger. What made this rewriting process particularly chaotic was that director Chuck Russell kept trying to write everyone else off the script, essentially attempting to claim sole writing credit by doing his own rewrites. Each writer would make changes, then the next writer would come in and change everything again, creating an endless cycle of revisions that stretched on for months. When the project finally went to the Writers Guild for arbitration to determine who would receive official credit, they had to bring in a large wooden crate just to hold all the different script versions. The Guild members literally had to sort through this massive collection of paper to figure out who had contributed what to the final screenplay. Original writer Tony Pourrier later recalled getting paid repeatedly just to rewrite his own script over and over again, saying the constant revision process actually helped his career because word got around Hollywood that he acted professionally during the chaotic rewriting process, even when other writers were trying to remove his contributions entirely. Fact 3. Maria Shriver's surprising casting choice. In one of Hollywood's most unusual casting stories, Maria Shriver personally recommended Vanessa Williams for the lead female role in Eraser, making a playful joke to her husband Arnold about his obvious attraction to the former Miss America. When the producers were searching for an actress to play Lee Cullen, the whistleblower who needed protection from Schwarzenegger's character, Shriver stepped in with her suggestion. Arnold later revealed this story during an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno while promoting the film in 1996. When Leno asked about how Williams was cast and whether Maria felt comfortable with Arnold sharing romantic scenes with the beautiful actress, Schwarzenegger surprised the host by explaining that his wife had actually been the one to suggest Williams for the role in the first place. The conversation between Arnold and Maria apparently went something like this. When they were discussing who should play the female lead, someone who would be new, refreshing, and talented, Maria immediately suggested Vanessa Williams. When Arnold asked his wife why she would pick Williams, Maria responded with characteristic humor, saying she knew Arnold had been drooling over Williams for the last 10 years anyway. This candid admission left Jay Leno visibly surprised, and it shows just how involved Maria Shriver was in Arnold's career decisions during their marriage. Producer Arnold Kopelson later confirmed that Shriver had indeed suggested Williams among other production recommendations, and he joked that he should hire Maria as a casting director given her eye for talent. The casting choice worked out perfectly, as Williams brought both dramatic skill and action movie credibility to the role, while also having the vocal talents to perform the film's end credits song, "Where Do We Go From Here?" Before Williams was selected, other actresses including Brooke Shields had been considered but declined due to scheduling conflicts. Fact 4. The first African-American $100 million writer. Tony Puryear made Hollywood history with Eraser by becoming the first African-American screenwriter to write a $100 million summer blockbuster, achieving this milestone despite having an unconventional background that had nothing to do with traditional screenwriting. Before breaking into Hollywood, Puryear had spent his career working in advertising at the prestigious J. Walter Thompson Agency in New York and directing music videos for major hip-hop artists. Puryear's path to screenwriting success was anything but typical for Hollywood. He had originally studied art at Brown University, where he also worked as a gourmet chef to support himself. After graduation, he landed a job at J. Walter Thompson, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world, where he worked under the mentorship of James Patterson, who would later become famous as a best-selling novelist. During his time in advertising, Puryear created campaigns for major brands like Burger King and Goodyear. His transition into the entertainment industry came through directing music videos for some of the biggest names in hip-hop during the late 1980s and early 1990s, including LL Cool J, EPMD, and K-Solo. This experience gave him valuable skills in visual storytelling and working with performers, but it was still a far cry from writing feature film scripts. Puryear's big break came when he was selected for the inaugural class of the Walt Disney Company's Writers' Fellowship Program around 1990. This opportunity allowed him to develop his screenwriting skills and eventually led to his work on Eraser. The success of the film, which earned over $240 million worldwide, opened doors for Puryear to work with major Hollywood figures like Oliver Stone, Mel Gibson, Jerry Bruckheimer, and Will Smith on future projects. Fact 5. 7 takes for a death-defying backflip. Arnold Schwarzenegger performed one of the most dangerous stunts of his career for Eraser when he completed a 65-foot vertical fall while executing a perfect backflip in mid-air, a feat that required 7 separate takes to capture correctly and had never been accomplished by any professional stuntman before. This incredible sequence was filmed on Warner Bros. Stage 16, the largest soundstage on their Burbank lot, where the production team constructed a full airplane fuselage specifically for this stunt. The scene required Schwarzenegger to be strapped into what the crew called a descender rig, which would control his fall while still allowing him to perform the complex aerial maneuver. The sequence begins with his character John Kruger desperately hanging onto the door of a plane, then continues as he lets go, performs the backflip while falling through an exploding jet engine, and finally drops into free fall toward the ground below. According to the official Warner Bros. Production notes, no stuntman had ever managed to complete a backflip during a controlled vertical drop of this distance, making Schwarzenegger's achievement particularly remarkable. The actor had to repeat this dangerous stunt 7 times because the directors and cinematographers needed multiple angles and perfect timing to create the seamless action sequence that appears in the final film. The complexity of the shot was increased by the need to combine live action with miniature work and computer-generated effects to make it appear as though Kruger was falling along the entire length of the airplane's fuselage and past the flaming engine. The final sequence uses clever camera angles and special effects to blend all these elements together, but the core stunt of Schwarzenegger's 65-foot fall and backflip was completely real and performed by the actor himself rather than a stunt double. Fact 6. Corporate lawsuit changed everything. The fictional defense contractor at the center of Eraser's plot was originally called Cyrex Corporation throughout the entire script and filming process, but a real-life corporate legal threat forced Warner Bros. To make expensive last-minute changes to every mention of the company name in the finished movie. The problem arose when Cyrex, an actual microprocessor manufacturing company based in Texas and a major competitor to Intel, objected to the similar-sounding fictional company name. Cyrex executives were concerned that audiences might associate their real technology company with the villainous corporation in the movie that was secretly selling advanced weapons to terrorists on the black market. Since the entire film had already been shot with actors saying Cyrex in dialogue and with company logos visible throughout various scenes, Warner Brothers faced a costly post-production nightmare to avoid potential legal action. The studio was forced to bring actors back into recording studios to redub every single line of dialogue that mentioned the company name, changing Cyrex to Cyres throughout the film. This process was particularly expensive in 1996 because digital voice replacement technology was still relatively new and time-consuming. Additionally, the visual effects team had to digitally alter or remove every appearance of the Cyrex logo from computer screens, business cards, building signs, and other props visible in the movie. Despite these extensive and costly efforts to eliminate all traces of the original name, the changes weren't completely successful. Sharp-eyed viewers can still spot several instances where the original Cyrex name appears in the finished film, including some computer files that show names beginning with CYX, and at least one lab coat worn by a technician that clearly displays the original logo. These remaining traces serve as permanent evidence of the legal battle that forced one of the most expensive post-production alterations in movie history. Fact 7. Laserdisc manufacturing nightmare. The North American Laserdisc release of Eraser became one of Warner Brothers' most infamous physical media disasters when manufacturing defects caused severe laser rot in the vast majority of copies, making them completely unplayable within months or even weeks of purchase. Laserdisc was a premium home video format that used 12-inch optical discs to deliver superior picture and sound quality compared to VHS tapes, but the technology was vulnerable to manufacturing problems that could destroy the discs over time. Laser rot occurred when moisture or air got between the layers of the disc during the manufacturing process, causing the reflective metal layer inside to deteriorate and creating visible specks, sparkles, and dropouts across the picture. While some Laserdisc titles were more prone to this problem than others, Eraser became notorious among collectors as one of the worst examples ever released, with movie fans regularly warning each other to avoid buying copies. The problem was so widespread that experienced Laserdisc collectors would specifically mention Eraser when discussing titles that were almost guaranteed to develop rot. Home video enthusiasts who collected hundreds of discs would often report that their copy of Eraser was among the first to become unwatchable, even when stored properly in climate-controlled conditions alongside other discs that remained perfectly fine. This manufacturing disaster was particularly frustrating for Warner Brothers because Laserdisc buyers were typically serious movie fans who paid premium prices for the highest quality home video experience available. These customers expected their expensive discs to last for decades, not fail within months of purchase. The widespread failure of Eraser Laserdiscs damaged the studio's reputation among collectors and contributed to the format's eventual decline in favor of DVD technology, which was more reliable and didn't suffer from the same manufacturing vulnerabilities that plagued optical discs of this era. Fact 8. Olympic Games secret premiere. Arnold Schwarzenegger gave Eraser one of the most unique movie premieres in Hollywood history when he secretly screened the film at Video Village during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, creating an exclusive preview experience that combined international sports, blockbuster entertainment, and live music all in one evening. This special screening took place before the movie's official theatrical release, making it an incredibly rare opportunity for Olympic attendees to see a major summer blockbuster weeks before anyone else in the world. Video Village was a special entertainment area set up specifically for the Atlanta Olympics, designed to provide visitors with various forms of media and technology experiences beyond the traditional sporting events. The venue served as a showcase for cutting-edge entertainment technology and offered Olympic guests a chance to experience the latest in digital media and interactive displays while they were visiting Atlanta for the Games. The timing of this premiere was particularly strategic, as it occurred just before a scheduled concert by the Goo Goo Dolls, who were at the height of their popularity in 1996, with hits like Name dominating radio stations across the country. This meant that Olympic attendees got an incredible double feature of entertainment, first watching Schwarzenegger's latest action spectacular and then enjoying live music from one of the most popular rock bands of the mid-90s. The exclusive nature of this screening made it an extremely coveted invitation, as only a limited number of Olympic visitors, VIPs, and special guests were able to attend. For Schwarzenegger, this premiere represented a perfect way to debut his film to an international audience that included athletes, celebrities, and dignitaries from around the world, creating buzz and word-of-mouth excitement that would carry over to the film's wide theatrical release just weeks later. Fact 9. DVD format pioneer. Eraser holds the distinction of being among the very first major Hollywood films released on DVD format, launching as part of Warner Home Video's Japanese debut of the revolutionary new technology on December 20, 1996. This made Eraser one of the earliest movies that consumers could experience, with the superior picture quality, digital sound, and interactive features that would eventually make DVD the dominant home video format for the next decade. The timing of this release was particularly significant because DVD technology was still experimental and unproven in the consumer market. Warner Brothers was taking a considerable risk by investing in this new format, and they chose only a select group of their most popular and technically impressive films to launch the platform. The inclusion of Eraser in this inaugural lineup demonstrated the studio's confidence in both the movie's commercial appeal and its ability to showcase the advanced capabilities of DVD technology. The Japanese launch was chosen as the testing ground for DVD because the country had a reputation for embracing cutting-edge consumer electronics and had already shown enthusiasm for high-quality home video formats like Laserdisc. By releasing Eraser and other major titles simultaneously with the DVD players themselves, Warner Brothers could offer consumers a compelling reason to invest in the expensive new hardware. This early adoption of DVD technology proved to be incredibly prescient, as the format would go on to revolutionize home entertainment and eventually replace both VHS tapes and Laserdiscs as the standard way people watched movies at home. For Eraser, being part of this historic launch meant that the film became forever associated with a major technological milestone in entertainment history, even though most viewers at the time had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of a format revolution that would reshape the entire home video industry. Fact 10. Visible Cyrex. Evidence remains. Despite Warner Brothers spending enormous amounts of money on digital alterations and voice dubbing to change every mention of Cyrex to Cyres throughout the film, eagle-eyed viewers can still spot several instances where the original company name appears in the final cut, creating permanent evidence of the corporate legal battle that forced these expensive changes. These remaining traces serve as fascinating Easter eggs for movie fans who know the behind-the-scenes story and pay close attention to background details during repeat viewings. The most obvious examples appear during computer scenes where file names and directories are visible on screen. In one particular sequence where Kruger and Lee are reviewing files on a disk in Donahue's office, several of the computer files have names that begin with 6, which was clearly an abbreviation for the original Cyrex Corporation name. The digital effects team apparently missed these small text details when they were focused on changing the more prominent company logos and spoken dialogue. Another visible remnant appears on a laboratory technician's coat during a scene where computer experts are trying to trace Kruger's location after he and Lee break into the Cyres building. The lab coat clearly displays a logo with the incorrect Cyrex spelling, showing that the costume department had already prepared wardrobe items with the original company name before the legal issues arose. These overlooked details become particularly interesting when you consider that Warner Brothers was under significant time pressure to complete the changes before the film's release date, and the digital technology available in 1996 was much more limited and time-consuming than today's computer graphics capabilities. The fact that some references slipped through the extensive revision process demonstrates just how thoroughly the original Cyrex name had been integrated into every aspect of the production, from props and costumes to computer graphics and set decoration.
Shadowhunters, but that it essentially disappeared. Only a limited theatrical production was kept so secretive that most entertainment industry publications and movie fans had no idea the film was being made until it was nearly complete. The Reboot was originally announced in September 2021 as a sequel to the original Schwarzenegger film, but it eventually became a complete reimagining of the concept with an entirely new cast and storyline. Dominic Sherwood took over the lead role as a new character in the Witness Protection Program, supported by co-star Jackie Lai, and a cast that included McKinley Belcher III and Eddie Ramos. The film was produced through Warner Brothers Home Entertainment rather than as a major theatrical release, indicating the studio's limited confidence in the project from the beginning. Interestingly, the screenplay was written by John Pogue, who had actually worked on rewrites for the original Eraser script back in 1996, though most of his contributions to that earlier project were not used in the final version. This connection to the original film represented one of the few links between the two projects, as the reboot otherwise shared very little with Schwarzenegger's version beyond the basic concept of witness protection. After its brief theatrical run in Germany on March 31st, 2022, Eraser Reborn was released on digital platforms, Blu-ray, and DVD in the United States on June 7th, 2022. However, the film received virtually no marketing support and quickly faded into obscurity, making it one of the most forgotten franchise attempts in recent Hollywood history.
Fact 11. Fact 11. Real railguns. Real railguns. Inspired fiction. The inspired fiction. The electromagnetic railgun weapons that serve as the central plot device in Eraser were actually based on real technology that the United States Navy had been developing and testing, though the fictional handheld versions in the movie were far more advanced and portable than anything that existed in real life during the mid-1990s. The U.S. military had been experimenting with railgun technology for decades, but their actual weapons were massive systems designed to be mounted on naval ships rather than carried by individual soldiers. Real railguns work by using electromagnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to extremely high velocities, potentially reaching speeds that far exceed traditional gunpowder-based weapons. Requirements and heat possible to create fired versions. Director Chuck Russell and the production team took significant creative liberties with the science, describing their fictional weapons as shooting aluminum or clay rounds at just below the speed of light, which would be physically impossible with any known technology. The distinctive visual effect of the railgun shots in Eraser, which created swirling circular trails as the projectiles traveled through the air, became iconic and influenced numerous video games and other movies. Games like Perfect Dark, Red Faction, Quake 2, and the first Turok game all featured railgun weapons that copied this signature visual style, creating a lasting legacy for the film's special effects work. In a remarkable tribute to the cultural impact of Eraser's railgun design, Steven Spielberg included the actual prop weapon as an Easter egg in his 2018 film Ready Player One, which was packed with references to 1980s and 90s pop culture. The appearance of the Eraser railgun in Spielberg's nostalgic adventure film demonstrates how the weapon design had become an instantly recognizable piece of action movie history even more than 20 years after the original film's release. Fact 12. Fact 12. Rubber crocodiles, 8 real actors. The terrifying zoo attack sequence in Eraser created some of the most memorable and gruesome moments in the film, but the scenes of alligators devouring bad guys were accomplished using mechanical and rubber reptiles rather than real animals, even though the carnage looked disturbingly realistic on screen. The production team went to extraordinary lengths to create convincing alligator attacks while keeping both the human actors and real animals completely safe during filming. Real alligators were used only for the brief establishing shots that showed them peacefully swimming in their tank before Schwarzenegger shoots out the glass to release them. Once the action began and the tank exploded, sending water and islands, every crafted special effect created by the legendary Nicotero and Berger EFX, who were famous for their work on horror films and creature features. The mechanical alligators were sophisticated enough to convincingly bite off one actor's arm and appear to swallow another man's head whole, creating moments that made audiences cringe even though they knew they were watching a movie. The rubber and animatronic creatures were designed with realistic textures, movements, and jaw mechanisms that could interact safely with the stunt performers while still delivering the visceral impact that director Chuck Russell wanted for these shocking death scenes. The American Humane Association, which monitors animal safety in Hollywood productions, confirmed that no real alligators were present during any of the violent sequences. The organization noted that the actors were never in any actual danger from live reptiles, and the real animals used in the establishing shots were handled by professional trainers in controlled conditions. The success of these effects demonstrates how skilled practical effects teams could create convincing animal attacks long before computer-generated imagery became the standard approach for dangerous creature sequences in action movies. Fact 13. Fact 13. Fact 13. Arnold's impossible physical continuity. Legendary film critic Roger Ebert pointed out one of the most absurd physical impossibilities in Eraser when he noted that Schwarzenegger's character somehow uses his supposedly shattered left shoulder to support the combined weight of both himself and Vanessa Williams during the climactic crane sequence. Despite having suffered multiple severe injuries earlier in the film that should have made such a feat completely impossible, Ebert's review highlighted this as an example of the film's complete disregard for realistic human limitations in favor of spectacular action sequences. The continuity problem begins early in the movie, when Kruger and Lee are targeted by a nail bomb explosion that drives Schwarzenegger's right hand, cause excruciating limit the use of that hand for weeks or months. Later in the film, Kruger is shot through the left shoulder by a bullet that, based on the entry point and his reaction, would have shattered bone and caused massive muscle damage that would make it nearly impossible to use that arm for any strenuous activity. Yet during the final confrontation on top of a ship,
Shadowhunters, but the project became such a disappointment that it essentially disappeared from most markets after receiving only a limited theatrical release in Germany. The entire production was kept so secretive that most entertainment industry publications and movie fans had no idea the film was being made until it was nearly complete. The Reboot was originally announced in September 2021 as a sequel to the original Schwarzenegger film, but it eventually became a complete reimagining of the concept with an entirely new cast and storyline. Dominic Sherwood took over the lead role as a new character in the Witness Protection Program, supported by co-star Jackie Lai, and a cast that included McKinley Belcher III and Eddie Ramos. The film was produced through Warner Bros. Home Entertainment rather than as a major theatrical release, indicating the studio's limited confidence in the project from the beginning. Interestingly, the screenplay was written by John Pogue, who had actually worked on rewrites for the original Eraser script back in 1996, though most of his contributions to that earlier project were not used in the final version. This connection to the original film represented one of the few links between the two projects, as the Reboot otherwise shared very little with Schwarzenegger's version beyond the basic concept of witness protection. After its brief theatrical run in Germany on March 31, 2022, Eraser Reborn was released on digital platforms, Blu-ray, and DVD in the United States on June 7, 2022. However, the film received virtually no marketing support and quickly faded into obscurity, making it one of the most forgotten franchise attempts in recent Hollywood history.
Fact 11. Fact 11. Real railguns. Real railguns. Inspired fiction. The inspired fiction. The electromagnetic railgun weapons that serve as the central plot device in Eraser were actually based on real technology that the United States Navy had been developing and testing, though the fictional handheld versions in the movie were far more 1990s. Military had been a technology for decades. Weapons were massive on naval ships, individual soldiers. Real railguns work by using electromagnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to extremely high velocities, potentially reaching speeds that far exceed traditional gunpowder-based weapons. However, the enormous power requirements and heat generation made it impossible to create the compact, shoulder-fired versions shown in the movie. Director Chuck Russell and the production team took significant creative liberties with the science, describing their fictional weapons as shooting aluminum or clay rounds at just below the speed of light, which would be physically impossible with any known technology. The distinctive visual effect of the railgun shots in Eraser, which created swirling circular trails as the projectiles traveled through the air, became iconic and influenced numerous video games and other movies. Games like Perfect Dark, Red Faction, Quake 2, and the first Turok game all featured railgun weapons that copied this signature visual style, creating a lasting legacy for the film's special effects work. In a remarkable tribute to the cultural impact of Eraser's railgun design, Steven Spielberg included the actual prop weapon as an Easter egg in his 2018 film Ready Player One, which was packed with references to 1980s and 90s pop culture. The appearance of the Eraser railgun in Spielberg's nostalgic adventure film demonstrates how the weapon design had become an instantly recognizable piece of action movie history even more than 20 years after the original film's release. Fact 12. Fact 12. Rubber crocodiles, 8 real actors. The terrifying zoo attack sequence in Eraser created some of the most memorable and gruesome moments in the film, but the scenes of alligators devouring bad guys were accomplished using mechanical and rubber reptiles rather than real animals, even though the carnage looked disturbingly realistic on screen. The production team went to extraordinary